So 4K TVs, I think, are going to be the mainstream for a very long time right now, and 8K is just not going to really take over for quite some time right now. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel, Tech and Gaming Reviews. Now, this is a video that I have been wanting to make and do for quite some time, a little bit, and we just now, over the last day or so, thought about it. But 8K has been around for the last several or so years. 8K was produced, or I should say was released to the worldwide in October of 2018 from Samsung, the only TV brand out there right now that is making 8K TVs, because right now TCL made an 8K TV, I think, back in 2020 as well as 2021, and then Sony just recently opted out on that, and LG did as well. So Samsung is the only one that is making 8K TVs right now, and yet they're still not as good as some of the flagship 4K TVs, like even from Samsung alone. Like the S90D that we currently have is a much better TV than this year's QN990F, which we're going to show you. At least for the specs that it has, it's definitely not worth the money, and gaming is absolutely the worst part of it. So let's show you the review that Ratings has given for the Samsung QN990F 8K TV flagship, because it's just not going to look all that great. So let's show you the reviews that they have given for this TV. So here is the Samsung QN990F 8K TV, and as you can see, it's got a pretty mostly green average score, but the one area that it has the worst on is definitely gaming, even though that's actually still pretty decent for gaming that a lot of casual people would not care about. So we're going to go through this and look at all the different cons. So here's the pros and the cons that it so far has. It says very good black levels with just a bit of blooming around bright highlights, so not very bad whatsoever. High peak brightness in HDR, which is what you would expect from a top tier, flagship TV from like Samsung. However, excellent sharpness processing and and then you got some noticeable dirty screen effect, which that's just to be typical for like an LED TV and whatnot. So we're going to go through these, and like the HDR brightness is good on both parts, like gaming and whatnot, and contrast is definitely good. This is one area that I think Samsung needs to like improve on, is with their 8K TVs, like some of their flagship 4Ks, like if you look at the QN85 series or the QN90 series, it's usually not as good as lighting zone transitions, but it's definitely a bit better than this. And yet this TV right here, it says, has 1,920 local dimming zones for the 65-inch size, as far as I'm aware. And decent black uniformity, just not very good at all. SDR color volume, it's going to be decent. Most people would not care for what it looks. It's still going to look vibrant. And just not good pre-calibration. It so far has some good PQ EOTF tracking, which is going to make HDR content look really stand out with good colors. And the sharpness looks good. Not so good on the HDR native gradient. And here is the worst part of it. This is why gaming has the lowest score. If you look right here, look at the input latency that you get with all of these. 37, almost 40 milliseconds of input latency. And then at 120 hertz, you basically get 23, which is basically a little bit better that some hardcore gamers would appreciate. But at 60 hertz, you getting almost 40 milliseconds, and then even 8K 60 hertz, you're getting 41, and max refresh rate, you're getting that. And then there's what they say right here. It says there's a single micro HDMI port directly on the back of the TV for gaming. When using that port, the input lag is considerably lower. So you can get 11 to 10 milliseconds that most TVs have at 60 hertz right there. And then 120 hertz, 5.5 to around 6. And then right here at maximum, you're getting less than 4 up to 4. And then, wow, 8K at max 120 hertz, 8.8. So there's only one HDMI port, so you only can have one console plugged into this 8K TV. So right there at the end of itself, that is a flagship 8K TV, and that doesn't look very good whatsoever. So it's definitely not worth the money. So I really just don't think that 8K is going to really become the norm for at least a very long time. Like not even the next generation of consoles like the PlayStation 6 and whatever that Microsoft comes out with their next Xbox. Like I don't even expect that to be able to play games at 8K. I still think 4K is going to become, or not become, just maintain to be the standard for gaming and just, top quality in general for pretty much a long time at this point. And I mean, 4K looks at good as it is. So yeah, I just don't expect that to be the case at all.
So yeah, you could just literally see that Samsung somehow went with a downgrade with especially their flagship 8K TV for this year. Although they can actually do a firmware update that I think might actually fix it, and that could possibly just be a bug in this TV, because there's been reports that the LG's OLEDs, such as the G5 and the C5, have had HDR and Dolby Vision not look super good, and it was some sort of a bug that LG has been releasing firmware updates to actually fix right now, and they have actually fixed most of the issues in terms of HDR gaming and Dolby Vision gaming and whatnot, and just the picture in HDR and Dolby Vision in general to where it doesn't look good. And I think the C5, there was a report that some modes, if you go outside of game mode or even whatnot, had higher input latency with auto low latency mode basically turn on from your Xbox or your PlayStation 5, and that has actually been finally fixed. So now if you have a C5 OLED, you can actually play on a different picture setting that you want, as well as you have auto low latency mode turn on. You'll get your lowest input latency as possible, but game optimizer mode is still going to be the best for you, to be honest with you. So even though 8K just like Samsung just went out of their way to give the worst 8K experience for gamers this year with the 990F, I honestly don't think that 8K is going to really become the norm for a very, very long time, because you got to think Sony opt out at 8K, TCL has also opted out at 8K, and then freaking LG has also now as well. And Samsung's just not doing good with their 8K with this year, especially with what we just showed you. You're just better off to get a OLED 4K. Now, there has been some YouTubers that I have watched that compared an 8K Samsung LED TV to a 4K OLED. 4K OLED still came out on top in terms of like clarity and just better clean image than pretty much an 8K LCD TV. And then you seen a flaw with that 8K TV that it had some dirty screen effect to it. So yeah, you're just going to be better off to save some money and get a 4K OLED. But I would honestly recommend, if you like Samsung, you're going to want to get a 4K QD OLED at the most. But if you want to spend a high price point that these 8K TVs have, I don't recommend getting a Sony like a Bravia 8 Mark II or a A95L. But I probably would say the A95L is definitely a much better price and a much better TV than getting an 8K such as like that one we just showed you, the QN990F. Yeah, that would be a better option. So you're just going to be better off to get a 4K OLED, however, but I would recommend getting a QD OLED so that way you can get the punchiest colors, punchiest HDR highlights. And this is not just for gaming, but your movies and regular TV usage, you would appreciate the quality that you get with a QD OLED. Now, some people don't appreciate that, but I personally love it. But then again, we love playing games on it, and that's what we prefer doing is gaming, and it is absolutely QD OLED. I had a burp there for a second, but QD OLED is just insanely, in our personal opinion, it is literally the best TV out there for gaming in general, because you're not going to get a nice, beautiful picture for your games than a QD OLED TV like that. But even then, you can honestly get a TCL mini LED TV that's honestly still going to be a way better price point. That's going to have better blacks, just better brightness, better gaming performance, and it's just going to be way less. It's just going to be way more affordable than getting an 8K Samsung TV. So yeah, even then, game developers have not opted in to make their games run at 8K resolution or anything like that. 4K is still the top notch, and even then, some developers are just using dynamic 4K for their gaming, so they're not really getting true native 4K as much. And then you got stuff like the PlayStation 5 Pro that's using PSSR to help it look upscale to make it look like it's native 4K, and it does a really good job. And then next year, the PS5 Pro is supposed to get a better upscaling that's supposed to help it look even more look closer to 4K than what PSSR looks, even though PSSR looks incredibly good, especially when you play The Last of Us Remastered. It really does look like the game's playing at 4K at 60 frames a second. So even then, developers have to use some sorts of upscaling just to get their games to run at 4K or look like they're 4K. And some developers can get their games at 4K, but they only run at like 30 FPS, and then you have a performance mode that basically lowers the resolution to like 1440p at like 60 FPS and whatnot. So even with the next generation of consoles, I really just don't think that 8K is going to become the norm for quite a long time. I think the following up console generation that's like in like 2034, 2035 or something, whenever they come out, that's actually when I think that we could start getting 8K gaming, and I think that 8K will start being a lot more affordable by then, and there will be a lot more affordable, well, not just affordable, but there will be a lot more 8K TV option selections that you can actually choose from. Like, I think like in the early to mid 2030s is like when we would start possibly getting some 8K TVs, like more 8K TVs from like TCL and LG and as well as Sony. Like, I think that's when we'll start getting 8K. But right now in 2025, I just don't think 8K is really the main focus on just for everything out there. I mean, there's not even really much 8K content out there in general, let alone 4K at the end of itself. So 4K, honestly, I think is pretty darn good. It's still really good. And honestly, even if we don't get 8K, if 4K just becomes the mainstream, which it could possibly happen, we may just stick with 4K for a very, very extremely long time. I honestly think 4K still looks pretty darn good in general. Like, honestly, when you're sitting back and like you have to get like a super big screen in order to see the better extra detail and clarity that an 8K has. But if you just stick with like one size, like what we have, like a 65-inch size, the 4K is still going to just be fine for everybody. So yeah, I think 4K is probably just going to become the mainstream for a very long time. We could get 8K possibly in a mid-gen life cycle, or a mid-gen upgrade, I should say, with like the PlayStation 6, with the PlayStation 6 Pro, that probably will come out in like 2032 or 2031, depending on what year that the PlayStation 6 comes out in. But 8K, I wouldn't get your hopes up. I just don't think 8K is going to come for a very long time. I think 4K is going to be the mainstream line for pretty much several of years from now. So don't expect 8K to actually take over for a extremely long time from now. So that's going to pretty much do it for this video. So if you could smack that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and leave us a comment down in the comment section down below if you are somebody that agree with us that 8K is just not going to become the mainstream for a very long time, and 4K is just going to be the main standard for probably several of years going on from right now until sometime in the 2030s of the years. So just let us know in the comment section down below of your thoughts, and if you personally think that 4K probably may just be the main standard for pretty much ever, or for a extremely long time, for like several of years from now. Just let us know in the comment section down below of your thoughts about 8K as well as 4K, and we will see you in the next video. So, tech and gaming reviews, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace out.